Welcome back. I'm your host, Mr. Clayton Gullett, and welcome to Executive Sessions. I'm joined with two great guests from MiddleGround today. The first one, to my left, Mr. Mike Bridge, a former jockey. You may not have known this. He actually had to retire because they disqualified him so much because he was able to outreach over the horse and always beat his competition there. Welcome, Mr. Mike.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Did you know that about yourself?
I still try not to think about it. Those were some happy times in my life, but it's just a memory now. So thanks for bringing it back up.
Fantastic. Mike is also the Managing Director of Data Operations here at MiddleGround. And to my right is Madelyn Tutewiler, also one of the most upcoming flaming chainsaw jugglers on the European circuit. She joins us here today, and she is VP of the ESG here at MiddleGround. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Clayton. Happy to be here with both hands today.
Yeah, me too. Did you all know those rumors just started? I just heard them a few minutes ago before we started. Did you all know about any of that?
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, that's good.
I did not.
Well, so welcome to the show. We like to keep things pretty light, but we're driven to be informative and to entertain, but also to really educate the people and our listeners and our viewers here about industrial manufacturing. But before we go into anything, what I typically like to do is whenever we have new people on the show, is just like for each of them to take like 5 minutes or so to like tell us your history, what brought you into the manufacturing world, your journey and how you've climbed the ladder. So which of you wants to go on the chopping block first?
I can kick us off.
All right, go Mad Dog. All right. Tell us about it.
So, it's an interesting journey to get to manufacturing. I did not picture myself in industry or manufacturing when I went to college. And so originally I was set out to do international relations, and that's what I did my undergraduate degree in. And I was convinced that I was going to work for the UN and save the world.
No way.
Yeah. And then I promptly realized that that wasn't very realistic for a lot of people and that I needed to do something a bit more practical. And so did some traveling after undergrad and came back for grad school and found safety, security, and emergency management, which was a way at the time to get me into FEMA work.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And so then had an advisor, a professor that led me down the path to taking all of that and saying, hey, why don't you look at environmental health and safety and helping people in the manufacturing environment. It was like, okay, I'll check that out. I'll see what that's about. And so did some internships at GE and Marathon.
Hey, Marathon buddies. All right.
And really enjoyed it. And so that's where I started and spent 6 years with Marathon and worked in environmental health and safety, did work in the field, back at their corporate office. And then my last gig with them was out in North Dakota. I spent a couple years working on a sustainability project, converting a refinery over to sustainable fuels.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that's definitely going to be a little consuming of your time.
It was a big project. It was a very big project. It was a lot of fun. It was there were ups and downs in cold weather out in North Dakota. And then Shelby here at MiddleGround reached out to me and asked if I was looking for some new opportunities, and went down that path. And that's how I came over to MiddleGround and made my kind of trip back to Kentucky, which I'm very excited to be back home.
That's awesome. It's such an interesting story to go from just be like, I'm going to go speak and be a part of the UN and change the world, and then go, yeah, actually, I think I'm gonna go make a difference in manufacturing and like people's lives that way. That's so cool. That's so cool. So what do you think was the biggest change for you as far as oh gosh, like I'm really scared to make this jump? Like, was it back in college, or was it jumping from refining over to here or GE or?
I think the biggest jump was after undergrad, I had a very set plan. I knew exactly where I was going, and then that kind of went up in flames. And so making that transition and having to completely reroute. And so that was where the biggest change happened. But then coming from industry over to MiddleGround was scary. That was a big change. It's kind of the world of finance is this unknown. Private equity was not something that was ever on my list of places that I was potentially going to work. And so it certainly, that was a big change. And it's been a transition, certainly for the last year, but it's been a fun transition. And now, instead of working with the employees that are at the facility I'm supporting or just the area that I cover, it's our entire portfolio of companies that we get to help and influence and support on their ESG journeys. So it's just kind of taken what I was doing and scaled it, and that's really exciting for me.
That's so awesome. Well, congrats on like such a big transition and a big jump, and landing here on this podcast today. It's so cool.
Thank you.
Mike.
Yes.
Let's hear your story, man.
Well, how about Madelyn's story? Mine doesn't quite take me across, the U.S. like Madelyn's. I'm kind of a local kid, born here in Lexington, and went to school in Louisville, and that's where I met my wife, and we're settled, in between Lexington and Louisville, in a little town called Shelbyville right now. But I was always that kid that the proverbial took things apart and put them back together. That kid, right? And so this mechanical kind of just loved Lincoln logs, building houses and tearing them down, that whole thing. And fortunate enough that there's this company called Toyota that settled, really in our backyard, like some of the other folks here at MiddleGround. That was my first real job, out of college, was at Toyota. Spent about 20 years there, almost 20 years. Kind of got hired in as a production engineer, helping make the car easier to build. But I was kind of driven, one of those driven people early on. And I had some aspirations to kind of, get more and more responsibility. And I knew I couldn't do that without, going to the operations side and really working with the people who build the car every day, helping them directly and being a floor supervisor and a maintenance supervisor. And so I was just really blessed and fortunate to get the opportunity to rotate to different areas. And that's what I really found a passion in is being with the operators, and being in operations is what really was passionate about me. And that's really where I kind of stayed for the most part until I left Toyota, 2.5 years ago or so, to join MiddleGround. And, ironically enough, Scott Duncan, one of our founding partners, was like one of my first assistant managers almost 2 decades ago.
Wait, he was your assistant manager?
He was my direct assistant manager when I was a young green engineer, didn't know a thing, about the real world. And Scott was there to, his tutelage and mentorship. And, obviously, we enjoyed working with each other. And, he reached out a couple years ago, and, I couldn't turn down. I love working for Scott. He has a great way of relaying the message and what we're trying to do here at MiddleGround. And it spoke to me, and being, like Madelyn said, being able to help, directly, so many people, impacting lives through the different things that MiddleGround's doing with ESG, to be able to do that at even a bigger scale than, I could just do that with my little group, that I was responsible for prior, that was just an offer I couldn't refuse.
Oh. It was an offer he couldn't refuse. There is no tie to the mob here in this building. I just wanted to clarify that,
Maybe.
Oh, but Mike, I hear that you and Madelyn both are part of the ESG mafia here at MiddleGround.
That's right.
So both of you have very interesting stories. Thank you both for sharing that. This really kind of ties into where we're heading today, which is defining ESG. And so let's not waste any time here. Let's really tear into it. What is ESG, and what's the history behind it?
Well, ESG, I think, is something that's a little bit misunderstood, I think, by a lot of, in some ways it's been politicized. In some ways, it hasn't. But, I like to think of ESG as really, it's a set of tools and resources to help de-risk and uncover value, considering all the stakeholders in a company. And what I mean by all the stakeholders, these aren't just the investors in the company or things it's the community you work in, it's the employees that work for the company. Those are stakeholders in the business as well. And so how do you measure a business's impact on all the stakeholders? Like the aggregation of all that, measurements and metrics, that's ESG, right? And the end result is creating a sustainable business, considering all the stakeholders and all those metrics.
So okay. Well, I mean, honestly, you kind of answered my next question, which is why is it important? But what is the broader scope of the grand scheme of ESG? What is the importance of the big picture of ESG?
Yeah, the big picture is, how do we meet the needs of the current, generation while not preventing the needs being met of the future generation? All considering, social factors, being good environmental stewards. How do we meet the current needs while not infringing on the future needs? And so that is sustainability, and that's why we do ESG. We think there's an element of that is not, is uncovered, and a lot of people aren't looking at some of these elements. We're not just doing it because it's a buzzword for us. Back at Toyota, they were doing ESG before it was called ESG, and it was just good business, right? And so many people weren't, that it's become this niche kind of investment terminology over 5-10 years. But I do see a future where eventually we're not going to call things. There's not going to be an ESG. I fully believe there's not going to be an ESG department at MiddleGround in the future. It's going to be it's what we do. Right. And so we're implementing the standards and the processes right now. And Madelyn's doing a great job of identifying where we need to do that. And it's business as usual. And that's what it needs to be. That's where the industry needs to get to this is how you run a well-run business. Sustainable for the future is considering these factors. So we're just trying to get that going where it needs to be with our assets and our investments.
Absolutely. So Madelyn, I've got a question for you. So you came from Marathon. You worked in EHS as a former Marathon employee. I know environmental health and safety. So ESG is defined as environmental, social, and governance. So what do you see difference between those two programs?
There's a lot of overlap between the programs. I will say that. EHS looks at things from more a practical boots on the ground. What is the employee that's doing the work? What is relevant to them? And ESG kind of scales it back and looks at the entire organization and their influence, as Mike mentioned, to not just what they're doing and what they're making or what they're producing, but also the community and future generations. And so EHS is very central to how the work is being done as it's being done, and ESG takes it outside of that to future community, other stakeholders, and incorporates them in this overall picture of how does what we're making or how we're making it influence or impact our environment, our communities, our future generations.
So what do you say to people specifically who may not understand ESG or have a bad idea of what ESG is? What do you say to people and companies alike who are like, well, why should I care? We've been doing this for years. What difference does it make?
Well, I think the first thing is most companies have been considering ESG for quite a long time. There's a new name. It's a new kind of fad right now to throw the name on it, say, oh, we're doing ESG and check a box here and there. But in reality, most companies have already been considering these things. They have been doing volunteer initiatives in their communities. They've been supporting food drives. They have not wanted to negatively impact the environment because they don't want to be fined. They don't want to get in trouble from regulatory bodies. And so ESG is simply taking it to the next step and saying, not only are we going to do this because we don't want to get in trouble, but we also want to be proactive about making a positive impact. And so I recognize that there is this politicization of everything and kind of really taking it from one extreme to the other and making it a negative. But in reality, as Mike said, it just is good business. In the realm of Marathon, keeping things in the pipe, it's good business. Yeah. Not impacting the environment, it's good business.
Who'd have thought?
In manufacturing, reducing your scrap, it's good business. reducing your inputs, it's good business. And so there is everything that we do from an ESG perspective, it's good business. It's just you have to be able to think of it that way and not let the political or other influences skew it in a way that it's not.
So how do you think that ESG plays a role in the lives of workers in the manufacturing world, like the people on the floor that are making the products?
So to me, it's another way to focus on their livelihood. It's another way for the folks at the top, the board, the executive management team, to look at how they are influencing their workforce. So from wages, it's advantageous to pay their workers a living wage. It's advantageous to keep their workforce safe, to reduce turnover, to have good benefits, because that in turn reduces turnover and retains their workforce. So all of those things that are part of this ESG, specifically the S, are good for business and good for the workforce, because they're creating a better livelihood for that worker. And then that worker is going to want to stay around. They're going to be able to work longer. They're going to be more productive. And so it's this domino effect of positivity.
I like to ask a lot of the companies we work with, would you want your kid working here? You want your child working in the factory that you manage, right?
That's a good point.
Yeah, because, is it clean, safe? Does it pay, like Madelyn said, does it pay a living wage? Is it respected in the community it operates, right? It's not a polluter. It's things are well kept, well run. It's going to be around providing good jobs in that community. So would you want your kid to work here? If they can absolutely say yes, I know we're on the right track, and I know they get it, right? And so kind of to what Madelyn's saying about why are companies, doing this, I think the younger generation really cares more and more about, the goals of ESG. And so they give what I heard referred to as like a social license to operate. Like they're giving the company there's a social license to do business that we've given you because you do these things well and you don't do these negative things. And so we need to make sure that companies are setting themselves up to have that social license to operate.
Absolutely. So how do you think that ESG will shape the future of business specifically? Do you think it'll be more consumer driven, or do you think that companies will kind of start catching on and saying, okay, well, we need to make a better stand. We need to start pushing more for environmental initiatives or social or governance?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is usually consumer driven. That's the way it kind of goes. We see a lot of our, we have a lot of customers that are large OEMs, right? And their customers are demanding carbon neutral products and things. And so because we're a tier one supplier for many large OEMs or even further down the value chain, those requirements placed on them make their way down to the portfolio companies we operate in. And so as the consumer demands more, it's going to push its way down through the supply chain. And yes, everyone's going to have to get on board. And, there's no reason to wait. You don't have to have perfect solutions, perfect processes. It's, just start understanding your impacts.
So what challenges do you two see facing ESG today?
Well, the first challenge is the political kind of backlash that's being spread out there, and the misconception behind ESG, and just making sure that we're portraying the right messaging when it comes to ESG, and making sure that folks understand, to the point I think we've made, is it's good business. It's the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is not always the easiest thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. And it is good business, and it makes sense to have a positive impact and to have a happy, productive workforce, to not negatively impact the environment or your community or anything like that. If from the governance perspective, nobody wants fines or sanctions or anything like that. So the backlash it's misguided, I think, a little. And so just making sure that we're continuously portraying the right message behind ESG and showcasing all the good it can do.
So, okay, well, so kind of, You mentioned it was misguided. How do companies and communities and different organizations raise awareness to correct those skews and to really come out and support ESG and to turn public opinion back to ESG?
I think what they have, and part of what the support we give the companies as well is how do you translate, ESG impacts into, how do you help make that relatable to real world impacts, right? It could be how do you change, this ESG measurement, how does it materially impact the business? And so, you're working with your executive team, which is what I'm calling the company. This is how it's impacting your business. You may not have realized it, but there's actually a financial bottom line impact to not doing this, or an improvement that can be made by doing this well. So there's an education component of it, about how do you translate this from what is generally called a non-financial measurement to, you can relate some of these to real world, economics. That's one part of it. But to the communities, it's almost, there's almost like a homegrown, I talked about the consumer earlier, demanding, recyclable packaging, repairable products, things that don't go to the waste streams. So it's connecting and educating the needs of the consumers and the needs of the business and how that impacts, all of those and kind of that common ecosystem. So there's a large component of this that is education. Because when we go into a new business, it might be the first time they're really kind of hearing what is ESG,
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is this important to us? And so we have to do a lot of, this is what, it's not just because it's what MiddleGround wants or it's what our investors want, but it's actually like meaningful for your business. It's going to create value for you, and then ultimately, for your investors in the future. But, the first step that we try to do is an education component.
So you mentioned specifically, you were talking about investments and coming in and a lot of companies not understanding what ESG is, which, Madelyn, I hear that you have a story about Attala Steel.
I do.
Could you please share it with us?
I'd love to. So Attala Steel is one of our portfolio companies. They manufacture steel beams, I-beams.
Okay.
And they are based in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. So I'm going to take you on a journey down to Kosciuszko, Mississippi. So everyone, imagine.
I'm ready.
Close your eyes.
I'll close my eyes. I'm ready. My eyes are closed.
So we're taking a trip down there, and you pull up to the facility, gravel roads. You pull up off of a country road onto gravel roads into a large gravel parking lot, and you see basically pavilions everywhere. And in those pavilions are furnaces, punching machines, saws. There are no walls to the facilities, open to the environment.
Really?
Yep. Some of the buildings have walls, but the majority of the ones that employees are working in are open.
Just exposed to the elements?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Okay.
Yep. So exposed to the elements, gravel floors that everyone's standing on, dirt floors, gravel floors.
What, dirt and gravel inside?
Inside. Well, it's not really inside.
Okay. under the gazebo?
Yes.
Okay.
And then on top of that, there are no break facilities. There are no restrooms on site for the workers.
Wait. No restrooms?
No restrooms.
So okay. Before you go any further, what would you do if you had to go? Like, do you just get on and just drive to like a gas station or something, or?
It's near the woods.
Oh.
But I honestly don't know
Okay.
what the solution
Yeah, there might be some, like portable, like porta potties. Right?
Oh, okay.
This is what's given to or they have to go off site.
Yep.
Right. Hold it to lunch, or to break time.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. I'm sorry. Please continue.
So set the scene.
Okay.
Then they're manufacturing steel beams. Billets go into a furnace. They come out red hot. And then they go through saws that produce sparks that are flying 20, 30 feet without any kind of guarding or spark protection in place. The beams are then cut. There may or may not be any guarding to prevent anyone from getting close to the saws cutting the beams.
Is there anything to block, like, shrapnel that's being produced as it's like cutting through?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, wait a second. This is recent. This is when did MiddleGround acquire Attala?
This would have been in the end of 2021.
Holy shit. Okay, so that's really, really recent then. Okay, I'm sorry. Please continue.
Sure. So imagine all of this kind of as one, and the employees are not being paid very well on top of that, and they're doing very manual labor jobs. They're lifting and moving 350-pound steel beams as part of the workday. And so MiddleGround came on site, went to visit the facility when we looked at acquiring it. And I would say that 9 times out of 10, almost 10 times out of 10, a PE firm would go in and say, "Oh, no, thank you."
I can imagine.
And walk away from this kind of investment. And knowing that the lift to support and really bring their working conditions and set the expectation would require a lot of time, energy, and effort. And so that's not what MiddleGround does, though. So we see a challenge and we rise to it. We also saw an opportunity to make a difference for this business and for the lives of the people that worked there. And because we're such an operationally focused firm and have the people that have the knowledge and expertise in their back pocket to go in there and really make a difference for this facility and these workers and just the business overall, we said, we'll take it. We'll do it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So day one, we said, okay, wages, $15 an hour. We've got to pay these people for what they're doing. Then we said, okay, we need to put some guarding in place. We need to prevent these sparks from going all over the place and help and make sure that people aren't walking by exposed to rogue sparks and things like that.
Yeah, you don't want it to turn into like a scene out of like Tom and Jerry where they take a drink and then all the water just starts going out like a sprinkler.
No.
Exactly. We got a break room facility put on site, both indoor and outdoor facility. So there's a nice kind of picnic area as well as an indoor break room with lockers, vending machines, tables, all that kind of anything that you would expect in a break area.
Yeah.
We brought in bathroom facilities for them to use that are quite nice. I've been there, seen them. They are quite nice.
Very nice.
And then got quite a bit of PPE, some additional PPE for them to use, and said, hey, let's take this to the next level and make sure that you guys are using and have the right PPE for the job that you're doing. And so that was day one. And then we developed a list that was efficiencies in the furnace and the stacker, potential automation opportunities, additional machine guarding opportunities, safety protocol that we were going to put in place, environmental protocol that we were going to put in place, additional policies from a governance standpoint, and started training, educating, and working with that team, and have had people in the facility almost every week. I would say since ownership, trying to work with them on the various projects. We've upgraded the furnace recently, and we're hoping to see a 20% efficiency in that furnace usage. We've brought in machine guarding and some safety third-party providers to go in and do some wall-to-wall checks on everything. I'm happy to report that we are, for the year, we've had no lost time injuries, and they've also cut their total recordable injury rate for the year 2023 in half from last year, which is very significant.
Oh my God.
That's really hard to do.
That's
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, they've reduced their turnover rate by 20%. They've raised their overall average hourly wage by $8. And so we're seeing true impact to this business. We've put walls on the facilities on some of the buildings. We're continuing those activities. Put in new ventilation into the areas where they're doing galvanizing, which involves some chemical exposure. We've put in new protocol and standard work, and really just continuing to work through this long kind of punch list of new opportunities and new activities to improve the business, but also just improve the lives of these employees. The work that they're doing is hard work. It is hard work to produce a steel beam. And so we're working with them day in and day out to really continue to improve. And it's been really exciting, especially this year, because you don't always see the numbers change overnight. It's not always an immediate impact. And so at first it was a little shocking, like, okay, we're not necessarily seeing the immediate change, but now we're really starting to see that impact and that improvement in those key performance indicators and those metrics that we're looking at from an ESG standpoint, particularly. And that's been really exciting. But it just goes to show that just because it's a heavy lift and just because it's a lot of work doesn't mean it's impossible. And you just need the people with the right expertise and the right know-how to go in and to be able to do that. And you need the right management team. I don't want to take credit away from the folks that are actually there doing the work, because they're certainly putting in the time and effort.
Absolutely.
And they've been working really hard to make those improvements and be out there living and breathing these changes and these updates, and it's showing, and it's really exciting to watch and be a part of.
So it really is the old saying of it takes a village.
It does. It does take a village. The ESG team at MiddleGround is 3 people strong, but it does take working with every CEO, every head of HR, every head of EHS, the operations team, the financial teams. Everyone is involved in ESG, and EHS. And so it's really important that everyone gets involved, and that's when you see these kinds of positive stories and really can show what happens when everyone gets behind something.
So, at the moment, I'm just kind of speechless, because I didn't realize that the working conditions at Attala were so appalling for so long. Now, if you would have told me like this was back in the 30s, I'd have been like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But this was 2021. This was less than 2 years ago.
Yeah, and that's if MiddleGround's not going to do it, who else is going to do it? We have the operators, we have the operations experience, and the internal know-how,
right?
And that's why we can uncover this value and do right by the workers and by the company that maybe other people miss. And that's why we're not afraid to do these kind of heavy lifts like Madelyn described.
So, and I mean, well, yeah, that you have to be very much in that spot where you're like, okay, well, let's look for a challenge and let's make a difference. But not only that, let's make a difference in the lives of the people that work there from the ground up instead of from the top down. And I think that is something that is so unique about MiddleGround, is it is something that is, well, I mean, it's just a company that legitimately cares. And I've worked for a lot of different places. I've worked for public, I've worked for private, I've worked for federal, I've worked for state, I've worked, for mom and pa, and finding a company like MiddleGround, I've never come across one before. But diving back in, I know that there are a lot of people who say, well, what's the evidence that you bring to the table? Aside from the story that you just told, I mean, at that point, it's just like, oh my God. Aside from that, let's dive in deeper and talk about data reporting for MiddleGround versus other firms, and what you all have learned as a team, what you find as a team, and how you take that information and apply it for real change in the world and the companies that you're involved with.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and without data, you're kind of just guessing, right? So data is the lifeblood of what we do, at MiddleGround Capital, not just in ESG, but in all parts of the firm. So, when MiddleGround started ESG, before we even had like dedicated resources, 4 or 5 years ago, the experience of coming from an operations environment, and because our investment focus is pretty, dialed in to mid-market manufacturing, specialty distribution. We know those areas, and we know what to measure that's material to the business. And so we set out over a dozen key performance indicators 4 years ago that we track at every facility monthly. And so we've been getting that data, ever since then. And the reason is because, to have that awareness on our team, the management teams may not even be aware of the bigger picture of their company. They may have individual knowledge at a facility A, facility B, but when you can put all that together and understand how it's impacting the company overall, we can help them pinpoint their resources and prioritize where they need to go. And so it's really unusual for a GP or an investor, to have as much data on their companies as we do. It's a big ask for the portfolio companies, and quite honestly, it's really challenging for them. We have to work hand in hand, almost weekly to make sure they're doing that. And in transparency, we're trying to understand, is it the data we're getting, if we're not making decisions on the data we're getting and acting on it, we don't want to overburden companies with reporting requirements either. And so we're always continuously trying to improve the data we take in. Is it decision making, worthy? And we're going to continue to tweak that. Just because what we recorded and reported on 4 years ago doesn't mean that's what the same things we're going to record and report on in the future. It's going to be material, and MiddleGround's going to grow and mature in our processes. But in general, as we go out and we talk to different LPs and we talk to different other GPs, we're still ahead of the curve when it comes to, we've got a lot of data. And our challenge is to continue to make that meaningful for the companies. We do ask a lot of that. And so our data reporting is comprehensive across E, S, and G. And we report that to our board of directors quarterly. It's reported to our operations team weekly. We have something called Friday calls where the portfolios, report on their performance to our operations team. ESG metrics are part of that report out on a weekly basis. And then we do a more fulsome report out through the individual portfolio company ESG committees, of which the CEOs are always the chair of, and Madelyn or myself are members of that committee as well. Oftentimes the CEO will appoint kind of their right-hand person to help them out. And so we're talking in real time, what are the risks and opportunities in the future? Maybe it's regulatory risk, maybe it's physical risk. How are they preparing the business for those? And so we'll use the data we collect to inform those external factors and try to make strategic discussions at a quarterly basis, with the firm, with the board of directors, to make sure the companies have the resources in place. So all the data is about is to help us make a better informed decision to prepare that company for what's ahead, to improve their value to all the stakeholders, as like I talked about earlier, right? And to make them, a sustainable business. That's why we get the data that we get. And it is a lot. It's a lot of data.
It sounds like it's, you're generating mountains and mountains of data, but then I didn't realize that you had that many meetings all the time, or that you all were that involved. That's how do you have time to do anything else?
Well, it's a great question. We're a small team, but we have a large operations group, right?
Right.
We've got a couple of dozen or more operators. So the ESG team, so maybe a little bit about the roles between ESG and operations at MiddleGround, right? ESG team will kind of set the strategic target setting for ESG metrics. We'll help the companies collect them and identify what's important to them. We lean heavily on our operations team to help execute a lot of the plans that are developed, right? They are the absolute critical component of bringing the plans to life with the companies. And so we have a large team, and we use everybody.
Well, it takes a village, doesn't it? That should be the title of today's episode. Is It Takes a Village. It's wild to see the amount of data, boots on the ground stories that you've got, and just bringing everything together and getting everybody so involved and excited about it. Which I kind of want to dive into a little bit more of the social standpoint, which is, how do you see ESG impacting diversity and inclusion?
That's a great topic. So a diverse workforce and diversity, the way that we view it is diverse thought, diverse background, diversity from a racial standpoint, diversity from a gender standpoint. But there is a lot that makes up this concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's not just about diversity, but it's also making sure that everyone of a diverse background has an equitable chance to kind of have a seat at the table, and that they don't feel segregated or not included as a part of as a result of their diverse background or kind of what makes them diverse. And so diversity can get a little bit of backlash as far as folks think that decisions are being made strictly on diversity. But I think that the focus that we've transitioned to on diversity, especially as part of ESG and as part of this kind of broader movement, showcases the need to have diverse backgrounds and diverse thought, because the more ideas that come to the table, the better off you're going to be. The more backgrounds you have influencing a decision, the better decisions you're going to make, and the more likely that you are to really come to the best decision. And so having diverse thought in a room is so critical to being able to make good decisions, and from a business standpoint and from a workforce standpoint. And so having this additional kind of lens to look through is really important, and I think that ESG is supporting that as it moves along, and it can only be positive.
Yeah, the really cool idea of like keeping people local. I had a buddy of mine when I was going to college in Moorhead, and he owns a brewery there. And I was talking to him one day. We were sitting out, we were having a beer, and he goes, the thing that sucks is we have this college in this town. It brings in a lot of great talent, but people come here, they get their degree, and then they just leave. Mm-hmm. And there's at the time, there wasn't much infrastructure to keep people around. It was just kind of focused more on like, well, this is a college town. People show up, you do your 4 years and then sayonara, But I think that the cool idea of really using ESG to impact diversity and inclusion, like I'm a geologist and like I'm sitting here right now with you all, and like MiddleGround has done a great job of like making everybody, I feel like, have a voice and be like, no, you're just as smart. You're just as much as a part of this conversation as somebody who went to school for this. You're just as much, you're just as important as anybody else who's sitting in this room, as the CEO, or, a guy who reaches across, the finish line to beat, the other contestants when he's a jockey. So, I mean, it's really cool to see that. So how do you all envision the maturation of ESG in manufacturing impacting the communities in which these businesses operate?
Yeah, kind of on the data is data unless you do something with it. Set a target. So we talked about diversity and inclusion. We want when it comes to impacting the communities where these businesses are located, one of the targets we set for our businesses is that their workforce reflects the communities they work in. So whether, through gender diversity or ethnic diversity, we ask that their hiring pools and their workforce makeup generally mimic the areas they work in. And so they're recruiting from the whole community, different events. And so if you can really, recruit from the community, it starts to reflect the community, reflects the values of the community, and then you're kind of giving back. It's this cycle, right? That's how one way they can reflect the communities that they work in, and not just a reflection of maybe the ownership or something like that.
Do you think that pulling people local from a community makes a difference in production or quality, or maybe even family, like that family type of atmosphere within these businesses?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I couldn't think of it. My past life, the way I worked before here. You had a small town, and then here comes an 8 million square foot facility, largest OEM factory in the world for Toyota. It changed Georgetown, Kentucky, right? Well, these factories are doing the same thing in the rural communities that they're working in. And so communities want to be proud, right? They want to have a sign when you first drive into the city, home of XYZ manufacturing company, right?
Yeah.
That ought to be a goal of every company, right? To have your sign at the entrance, Mayor is, Tom Jones, and it's the home of Attala Steel, right? I mean, that's an aspirational thing, right? That's what we want them to think like.
So, it really does come down to investing in the people and having diversity and inclusion and really making people feel, shocker, like they matter. Who'd have thought? But there's another initiative that you all introduced that caught my attention when you were talking about Attala. When you first came in, you were like, we have to raise the wages up to $15 an hour. But I hear that there might be a more catchy phrase of 25 by 25. What does that mean? And what does that mean to those communities?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, Madelyn, she did really well talking about the $15, but look, it's old news now.
It's old news.
It's old news. And, you know, the more diligence we do in our companies these days, the less and less, believe it or not, there still are people at manufacturing companies doing skilled work, making, you know, less than $15 per hour. But it's
that's insane.
Yeah, it's less and less every time we do diligence, which is a good thing. And we turn them around, you know, from day one. But 25 by 25 is our target activity to, you know, by the end of 2025, that the minimum base hourly rate in US dollars is $25 for any full-time employee at the company.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. I mean, so just walking in, you're just going to walk in at 25.
Yeah, starting out. And so there's a lot of reasons behind, you know, why we want to do that. You know, we've got a little bit of a runway, although it's shrinking, you know, to meet that target. And it's a big lift for the companies. It's a cost. And our operations team and the ESG team work with them to help understand the levers to help, you know, be more efficient and, you know, and at the end of the day, you know, help pay for that. But labor markets are as tight as they've ever been. The unemployment rate is still incredibly low. So it's number one, it's a business imperative if you want to attract good talent. You know, when we first raised $15 per hour, we saw an immediate impact on the quality of hiring pool and the retention. You know, particularly at a company like one of our companies, Aero Trueline, their hiring pools increased by 40%. So it addresses a real need for the business to find quality employees who want to stay. But it's also the right thing to do. You know, this is hard work in factories. And so we believe it should pay a premium to certain industries. And so that's why we're doing it. It's the right thing to do. And it's a very unconventional thing, you know, for a private equity company to do. But we're hanging our hats on it.
This is so cool. Just the idea of just like, yes, like is there the idea of investing in people and it helping production and it helping quality of life? Yes, but the bigger thing is you're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and people deserve a livable wage, one where it's not like, oh, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, but like, oh, I can actually afford to like take my family out and go on vacation. We can go do stuff, and it's very inspiring. We're almost out of time, which sucks because we didn't even get halfway through.
Yeah, I've
this.
got a whole nother page and a half of notes.
Yeah, I know. That just means you all are going to have to come back again.
We could do part 2.
Part 2 of the ESG. Yeah, we might have to do that, John. So here's the last question that I have for both of you. What do you recommend to those who want to start or who are just now starting their ESG journey?
Well, I learned this quote at a conference I went to, and I very much love it. And it's that you don't have to know how much you weigh to start going to the gym. So,
I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
If I could credit the woman that said it, I would, but I don't remember her name. But you don't have to know what your metrics are immediately to start. You don't have to have perfect data to start. Figure out what's meaningful to you or to your business and start working at it. If it's environmental, start changing out your light bulbs for LEDs. Start looking at efficiencies. Turn the temperature up or down, given the season, 2 degrees. Figure out what your highest energy consuming equipment is and figure out if you can make it more efficient. If it's social, look at your wages, look at your turnover, look at your safety rates, and start figuring out how you can improve and make it better. If you need stronger governance, start looking at your policies, start benchmarking, look at your tax practices, your employee handbook, all of those things. Look at your governance structure, who's making decisions, how does that cascade down? But you don't have to have perfect data, and you don't have to know everything to just start working at it. And it doesn't have to. The other thing is that it doesn't have to be the most perfect, big, amazing project. Right. Every little thing adds up, and every little thing does make a difference. And so don't overthink it or try too hard. Just start doing something.
It really is a snowball effect, isn't it?
That's right. Yep.
One day at a time. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in today on Executive Sessions. Thank you, Mike and Madelyn, both for taking time out of your busy mornings. I'm sure, let me guess, you guys have a meeting that's coming up, right?
Sure do.
Hey, I called it. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Executive Sessions. And thanks for watching. If you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, or if you're listening to us via any listening platform. I don't know. There's so many these days. But thank you all so much. A big thanks to Clark Freeman and John Stewart. You can't see them. They're behind the screen right now. They're making all of this come to life. And thank you both again. Join us next time on Executive Sessions, where there may be a part 2 of ESG. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.